Credibility, they emphasize over and over, and credibility, meaning that this is a public policy that the people want. In other words, their parliaments have approved, and that it will stay for some time. The kind of energy transformation we need and the expansion in power generation in Africa we need requires some of the big projects. I am strongly a supporter of off-grid solutions, but I say to even our friends that don't convince Africans that they just need lighting. African communities need power that enhances their productivity. So when we say off-grid, we mean a mini-grid that is 1 megawatt. So the people can add value to agricultural products, so they can store vaccines. Water can be pumped, so the girls are not taken out of class to collect water. So it must be energy for productive uses that transforms the economies. So in looking at distributive power, we must look at mini-grids. But the issue of political risk is crucial. There's an African country we're working on now that it has all the basic fundamentals, long-term energy vision, strong laws in place, and a lot of incentives. But guess what? $300 million moving in when they need $4 billion. Political risk. Because these companies have to borrow money for 30 years, maybe. They're concerned about that. So my point is, there are countries that have overcome those risks, and I believe governments must be committed to do that. This is not charity. They did it for mobile telephone. Companies came in, and we always use that parallel, because I was here when Nigeria privatized the mobile phones in 2000, and I remember the arguments, selling state assets, but I bought a mobile phone here for about $700, $800, and it was analog. This is important to note that immediately it was privatized, people bought it. Africa, 4 million mobile phones around 2000. By 2013, 720 million. Our people see opportunity, they leapfrog. It's the same with distributive power. And of course, what the minister said, already we are doing studies now in Nigeria, Kenya, and elsewhere. The poor are paying 40, 70, 80 cents per kilowatt hour by the time you get the diesel in. But not to talk of the opportunity cost when it's not there. So I just wanted to put it in context that long-term policy that is stable and predictable is crucial. Governments and our people have to know you don't just change your mind. Right. The guy borrowed money already to begin to build the power plant. That's why the transparency of the policy, that it is openly debated and adopted as law, and the investment protection is put, is crucial. By the way, when I say private sector, I mean guys like Owando.
I was going to ask.
Local.
Right, I was going to ask. Yeah. What do you say to those comments?
Well, it is important to have, TLC. Like you said, I like the acronym, actually. However, I think that what tends to happen is that the state used to control a lot of the resources on our continent. That's a throwback from colonialism, right? Governments have come in, and the demand, population growth has just been incredible. So we're going to be, Nigeria alone in 2050 will be 400 or 500 billion, so it'll be the third largest country. Now, in that interim, okay, the resources of the state have not been able to fund infrastructure and fund the explosion of job opportunities, particularly and accordingly the consumption of these resources which we have, which we consistently export. And what we've found is that when we've broken through the aspect of commercialization and liberalization, first and foremost, in whatever form, albeit a troublesome process of privatization. For example, when the privatization I went through in the year 2000, it was transparent. It was an advert in the newspaper. We responded to the advertisement. We created a consortium. We were all like 29 years old, so we were called the Eaglets Consortium, and then everybody said we had no chance of winning. Eventually, we put our business plan in. We won. The first day we showed up at work, there was a demonstration out there, and everybody was carrying placards saying we don't want Eaglet managers. Like the minister said, you face labor issues. It took us a couple of weeks of engaging them and making them understand that we plan to do something good out of it. And thereafter, we were able to reward people, computerize the operations, reduce the staffing initially, then grow the business from 500 to 5,000 employees, and from $50 million enterprise value to $5 billion in 10 years. The policy was there. We engaged and we encountered a lot of regulations that the principle was there, but we had to change them over time. So it's a two-way street. You can't have a framework which is ready-made on day one for a continent like Africa. It's going to evolve. So somebody said to me, never confuse a clear sight of vision with a straight line of execution. We thought, for example, the regulation on the downstream will occur within 2 years of us buying into the company. Till today, we haven't got the regulation. That's 14 years after. So we diversified into the gas industry, which didn't have a regulated ceiling pump price. With government policy, with the help of the minister, we got licenses to build out pipelines. Okay, we put a pipeline system in Lagos that has 130 industries that have been shifted from diesel. So I can officially tell you I've retired from the diesel cabal now. Because gas, there's a better return out of gas. And we built gas pipeline systems in 4 regions in the country, and we continue to build that. We got a license to build a central processing facility, which will focus on taking gas for the domestic market only. And we're doing that in conjunction with AGIP. We have approval with ENI to do that. So the policy changes. And I have pipelines, for example, that we've built that have 130 kilometers today. My regulatory approval is for 7 kilometers. And the question is, I can either keep going back and forth to the regulator to extend it, because there's always a gap, a lag time, or we can keep building out these things. Now, we can take the risk because we're a local company. But the difference, what we're able to do now is take our business model, take it abroad, and raise capital abroad, okay? And we accept local risks, but we run a global operation that will extract capital. So I think one of the big things that we do need to look at is that a lot of our development is not necessarily going to come from straight-line foreign investment who can't accept all the risks. It'll come with joint ventures. We'll come with companies taking risk, finding partners, and saying, let's do what we do best in Nigeria, take the challenges, take you through, and you provide the capital for us. I mean, you mentioned the telecoms. I mean, telecoms in Nigeria, really, the licenses originally were one South African company whose share price dropped when they won the license here, and 2 Nigerian companies. I was involved in one of them, which we ended up selling. It's now Airtel today. It started in my garage in the house, and we all put a whole and we formed a small consortium and built it until we got enough capital to pay for the license. The other company, Glo, is also Nigerian. And so these jobs, these investments are being done by local indigenous players who've become large. But there was a lot of vendor financing which came from foreign telecoms providers who took a risk on us and loaned us millions of dollars, okay, on the basis that these were management teams they can trust. So I think we do need to look at these models again and understand that, this so-called risks, political risk, is trounced by an economic opportunity that's so vast, okay, that you cannot help but be in here. And I think we're seeing the results with the likes of GE. I mean, the minister said we have a power system that is just coming. It's just been, the companies will start low and eventually kick off. But the difference is you cannot ignore a market that has 4,000 megawatts of installed capacity and has 4 times the population of South Africa, and South Africa has 40,000 megawatts. So we need 40 times the investment to increase the GDP per capita consumption of electricity. So it will evolve and it will happen.
Can I add a point?
Please.
I think part of what he said there is important for government officials, the learning process. What can they learn from practical experiences of companies that are venturing into the energy system, and in that process, they help to modify policy to facilitate more investments coming in? Because some of the projects, some of our partners, USAID, Power Africa, are looking at what they call the transactional approach. Right. What can they do to get a transaction, for example, if there was a project already? The best one they just gave us is the wind farm in Kenya. Stuck for 9 years, negotiations, private sector ready, but the wind farm is not moving. So the US and others moved in to say, okay, what is blocking this investment? So what can we do to remove the barrier and get this investment going? That required probably just a couple of transactions, yeah? The point here is, what do you learn from that helps you modify public policy so you crowd in more investments and scale up? What they are doing, probably you need 10 more companies in Nigeria to do. Somebody made the honest comment yesterday in one of our panels on energy. He said, frankly, we've been looking at oil. We've really not started looking at industrializing this nation now that we know we're the 8th largest gas country in the world. Beyond LPG, some of what Minister mentioned, fertilizer, plastics, the whole value addition dimension. For a number of countries, they make a clear long-term plan with milestones.